All right. I guess we are going live. So sorry about the 10-minute delay. A little bit of technical difficulties. I think I gave the wrong link to the guest here, who is a guy named Mike, who apparently has absolutely zero plot problem being completely public in every way. And I say this because I've been his friend on Facebook, and he has quite a few Facebook friends, a few thousand probably, right?
You might be overstating me a little bit.
But like 1,000, over 1,000, right? Like you would say.
Yes.
Yeah, and you also recently made a walk away video, which I liked. I thought it was quite an interesting testimony. And you are a script writer, and you've done acting, and you live in New York City. And the main thing that I really know about you is that you post status updates that are kind of like, to be perfectly truthful, it's actually really a lot like what I used to do all the time. They're almost like journal entries where you're just like, okay, instead of just like writing this for myself, I'm going to write it for all my friends to read. Ha ha ha. And it's about these like silly dates you've gone on, or things like that. And I read them as if you're usually trying to be entertaining. You're writing them as if you're telling a funny story, and and I assume, and tell me, correct me if I'm wrong, and I say this because I did the exact same thing. You're partially doing it because you know the more you do that, the better you become as a dramatic writer, which is actually what you do. You are a script writer, which I don't know if you know this about me, but that's what I went to university for. Did you know that?
Yeah, I did. That's awesome.
Okay, so
I
yeah.
feel it's sort of like I feel like it's sort of like Carrie Fisher said, if my life weren't funny, it would just be true, and that's unacceptable.
uh yeah. So yeah, what you're doing in the current year, and what you're seem to be having the ball rolling for is basically what I kind of decided against doing when I majored in playwriting, but ultimately I kind of wanted to do screen more. But I realized that the fundamentals of really writing a good movie or television show was to just be really, really good at the actual playwriting, aspect, like dialogue and characters, and having them really talk to each other. So that's why I studied playwriting. And then I learned enough about the sort of the film world through people that I knew, and then actually had firsthand experience with the New York City theater world. And I decided, like, oh my God, screw this. Like, this is, like the so many of the
Yep.
people that you have to deal with, and
Oh,
so
they're horrible.
they are so horrible. Like, and like, you imagine the worst of the drama nerds from high school, with this. They've been doing it for way too long, and they act like surly old businessmen, but they still have the weird drama kid attitude, and they're very, very competitive. And there's all sorts of like weird politics, and they're all completely judgmental, and it's just this weird thing. And then there's like the fucking PR people and crap that are in the mix that
Ugh.
you occasionally have to deal with, and they are just nightmares of their own. It's all like, oh, hey, I'm going to throw you a publicity party that you're ultimately paying for, and I'm going to invite a bunch of people that are supposedly going to maybe produce you, except for I really just bought my own, invited my own fucking friends, and they're drinking your alcohol. And it's like, oh, great, thanks. And it's like, now I owe you $20,000. Awesome. That happened to a friend of mine. So yeah, but
Jesus.
well, it wasn't 20,000. It was probably a few thousand, at least. And it just seemed like a whole racket of its own. So I decided to largely pursue my music at that time in my life when I was in my early 20s, early to mid 20s, and I was still writing a lot, and I had this skill of playwriting. And in San Francisco, I did a number of plays and um, theatrical work, like sometimes I would star in it and it would just be this sort of like one person thing that where I'd be reading text that I had written in a dramatic way on stage. I did that many times, and I had some plays that I did and some other things that were like that. But I kind of moved away from that until really doing YouTube. But you seem to sort of directly tackle the dream, and you're trying to produce a series called Cigarettes and Valentine, which is why don't you tell us what it's about and why you felt like you would like to talk to me in general and things like that. I'll let you talk for a little while.
Well, like you said, I'm very open about everything, so hopefully I won't be like blacklisted from my big mouth and all my oversharing. But it's basically, like you said, you think you need to have all these dramatic skills at playwriting and the fundamentals and all that, but I feel like it's either that or you need to just have really crazy shit happen to you. Because with me, I feel like half the shit that I write, like I almost don't deserve a writing credit because I've just had such crazy experiences and crazy things that people have said to me. And so I created this show because, I came out about a decade ago, and for all of these years, I've watched these shows like Looking and Queer as Folk and all of these things that are just insulting how unrealistic they are and how far removed from reality they are. So I thought at some point somebody would write a show about the reality of the gay community and dating and relationships at this era, and no one did. So I was like, all right, if I have to be the one to do it, I'll do it.
I thought that Looking was kind of realistic to the point where it was like, yeah, I bet this is what boring gay guys are like. Why
The creator of that show.
Why
The
do
creator of that show. Sorry, the guy who created that show said that it was his goal to show that gay people can be as boring as everyone else. I was like, well, mission succeeded.
yeah, okay. I didn't know that he actually said that. I was just like, yeah, because I've actually talked about that show Looking, and how it's like it was just like the boring gay guys that like I probably wouldn't really be friends with. They would be like my friend's roommate or something. And I knew those type of guys. But they like everybody's fine with dating them. Like they hook up with them on Grindr because they're not bad looking and everything. But like ultimately, when it comes to things that people want to watch on television, it's like Drag Race or maybe something more like your show.
Oh, thanks. Well, I just thought it was very unrealistic. Like the main guys in that show, for example, they're all attractive, like you said. They're all, in their 20s and 30s. And one of them dates a 70-year-old. One of them dates a guy who's like 400 pounds. In the first episode, the lead character meets a guy on the bus and they're in a relationship forever. And I just feel like this is not the reality of gay dating.
Yeah, I can definitely see. No, the actual dating itself, the romantic relationships was very contrived and trying to make it seem like the successful work relationship between the two video game designers. Like, oh yeah, that happens all the time,
Right.
But I guess it was the characters, like how they acted moment to moment was fairly realistic. But I guess that the all the different because there's a number of different writers that worked on that show, and a number of them are probably like fairly talented, and they sort of milked those guys for like, how do gay guys act? And then they had this like grand political narrative that they were like trying to implement, and that's where they had the overweight guy dating one of the hot bearded one, and it's just like, okay, I don't know if that would happen, like.
Yeah, exactly. Or if it's like, I feel like that's often the case, is it's this very idealized portrayal. Like even if you watched a show like Glee, there's the two gay guys, one who is very flamboyant and insufferable, one who's the hot straight guy, and because they're the two gay characters, they're in love, they get married. What they don't tell you is that in real life, if this were happening, Darren Criss would tell him, I'm masked straight acting, drop dead,
Wait, which one? Okay, there was the gay face one. That
Yes.
I remember him. I remember him. But who was the other one that was gay on Glee?
Darren Chris.
Hold on.
He's not gay in real life, but his character
I
was.
I, I gotta look him up because I it's been a while since I watched that, and
Did you watch that Versace show?
no, I just haven't seen
It was
that at all. Ooh, I was looking at porn on this other uh
close tabs.
yeah. Okay, so there. Oh, him. Yeah, the hot guy. Yeah.
Mhm. They don't tell you though. They don't address reality that he would never give that guy the time of day in real life. You know. And I feel like
No,
if we
not
don't
at
like
all.
these things
Yeah,
about
yeah,
reality,
yeah.
yeah. And I feel like if we don't like these things about reality or about our culture, then the first thing is we need to talk about it and have some sort of depiction of reality.
Uh-huh. Yeah, well, and what is your opinion on like do you have any sort of mission statement of trying to change gay culture by depicting it?
Yes, for sure. I mean, I feel like it would be a little bit delusional for me to think, oh, I can change the culture,
Yeah.
But if not change the culture, then at least give voice to people who have never seen, like for me, I've never seen gay characters on TV that I could relate to. I've never seen gay characters who are going through any of the sort of same things as I've been. And I think also, when I was a kid and growing up, I would watch all of these shows like Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, and I would see people like Ross Matthews and Carson Kressley. And it just gave me such a negative image of even the word gay that for a year or two when I came out years ago, I said I was bi because I just had such a negative association even with that word. And I think that's the reason, because I think we just see the worst of us on TV.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I don't think that we see the best of us really. When I was a kid, so how old are you?
Oh, I'm old.
No, no, you're not though. But like, how old are you?
I am in my mid to late 20s.
Yeah, you're not
More
old.
late.
I'm literally in my mid 30s. So like um this would be before your time. I when I was about uh I came out when I was 14, and
Oh,
when
wow.
yeah, so I came out in 1996. So I very well, and I came
Wow.
out in the city center of Seattle. So like my high school was within walking distance of the gay neighborhood in Seattle. So I could walk to the gay neighborhood after school, and we did like very frequently. And a number of us at my high school were gay. It was actually like it was this alternative high school, and there was about 250 students by the time I graduated. And uh it was like the place that you would go to like come out and be an open homosexual. Like and we even had
Oh,
a
wow.
yeah, we even had a trans kid. And they were like one of the youngest people to have transitioned at the time. So um what I remember is that yeah, no, all of the gay stuff was like very alien and didn't, and it just seemed to be an excuse to have like sexy shirtless men, and or these like really shallow relationships where it was just like I, it didn't seem, not just can I not relate to this, but it just didn't seem like anyone could probably relate to this. It's like, are there gay guys who actually watch
Yep.
this and think to themselves that that's what it's like? Because I can't imagine that exactly. Um, but what?
Maybe just like those Ken dolls that, in the show we call them the Stepford gays. Like maybe they can, just these, Greek gods, but the rest of us, I don't think so.
Yeah, yeah, maybe, but like, I don't know. I don't know, uh and I don't know whatever happens to those guys. Like, what happens to those guys that are like that? Do they end up happy? I am not
No,
like I
I
don't know.
don't think so.
But okay, so what we had was the Sundance Channel, which back when cable television ruled media, um
Mhm.
people started watching. This was in the the 90s, and the 90s there wasn't really internet. I mean, there was email and there was mailing lists and eventually like bulletin boards by the late 90s, but there
Oh my
wasn't.
god, mailing lists. I forgot about those.
Yeah, yeah, they were like how you would communicate with people before,
Yeah.
like Facebook forums and stuff. And you um that was a cool way to like sort of network with people that you would meet in real life. But there was no like alternative gay media, but there was the Sundance channel. And Sundance would have these like indie gay movies, and one of the things that they would show was these old Greg Araki movies. Did you ever watch him?
No, I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with them.
He did Mysterious Skin, was his most
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, well, that was later Greg Araki movie, and it was okay. Like I thought it was actually pretty like he stepped up his directing game a lot, but he didn't write that one, or if he did, it was an adaptation from a novel. Um, but his really really early movies, like I think his first two movies were called The Living End. And oh, I'm not supposed to swear on this channel because it will maybe get demonetized, so it's totally effed up. And The Living End, and those movies I did relate to. Of course, I was like an angsty little, Seattle alternative growing up in the '90s,
Yeah.
like kid, like, but they were real, and you should check out those. And I feel like there's been these here or there kind of um movies that that come out, and it's these very very rare moments, but I can't think of any others. So but anyhow, let's go back to so you're trying to um shop this script, and how would you describe your series? Like it we know that you're trying to represent what things actually are like, but what would be a good example for the audience to hear about for the type of thing that you get into in your script?
There's a lot of it. It's basically a dramedy series that's full on with the comedy and the drama. There are the absurd disaster dates, and then there's also the more emotional, heartfelt things of seeing things like the emotional cost of individuality and repeated heartbreak and all of these things, and trying to find love in this grinder world and this culture that only cares about lust. But it's sort of a mixed bag where we have these crazy things that happen, but then you sort of get into the emotion behind them and the things of it's always sort of that duality of the comedy and the tragedy that, like, they on its surface, these things, these bad dates and stuff in the moment are very funny, but then you see the toll that takes on somebody when they go through that over and over again.
Okay, well, what's an example? Like, tell us a story about an episode that you're either already wrote or thinking about writing.
Okay, well, there's one. Okay, there's one. So, uh, I don't know if you've noticed, but lately it seems, and I don't remember this being the case a couple years ago. I think it's gotten a lot worse. Lately, if you look on Tinder or Grindr, any of these apps, it seems like everybody's into some really sick shit. Like, no judgment, but
I don't
a
I
little
don't
bit.
use the apps, but okay, keep going.
Oh, I'm jealous. But lately, it's like every guy I meet wants you to like fucking tie them up and tie a car battery to their nipples and like beat them with a warm squash or something. so
Weird.
um so there's an episode that sort of delves into all of these things, and it's half based on this guy that I had met who is this that I'd gone out with, who's this very preppy country club, rich yacht club kind of a guy. And then I find out that I had met him separately, but then I found his Grindr profile, and I found that he wanted a guy who will be his chastity slave. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
So
What?
what they want is somebody who will be that they will put their dick into a metal cage that is locked, and their partner, whoever, holds the key to it. And you just go around in that all day.
Thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, we get into this in an episode of it where the main character Adrian meets this guy and he really likes him, and then he finds this out, so he agrees to it. And this is sort of a big part of his struggle throughout the series is, uh, be yourself, but be yourself means alone. So do you be alone? So do you change yourself to make people like you? So he finally agrees to it, and there's the scene where that happens where the guy puts his dick in a cage and happens off camera, but and so you're watching and it's very funny and cringeworthy and absurd, and then suddenly just changes on a dime and gets really dark and fucked up and I'm sorry, effed up, and Adrian just sort of breaks down in his bed, starts like crying, and is like, just realizes like, I am not the person you want me to be.
Okay. Yeah, that
Or
sounds
there's
right.
another one. There's another one where he goes to the suburbs to meet this suburban guy and ends up having to hide in a bomb shelter. And there's a whole bunch of different stuff. We sort of try to break up the more dark and depressing stuff with some more funny, lighthearted stuff.
Yeah. That sounds cool. I would definitely watch this. So what uh would you say that a number of people would describe the show as a brutal look at dating in the age of Grindr? Would you say that that would be
Yes, absolutely,
okay?
definitely.
Okay. And what are your opinions about Grindr culture in general? I mean, you came of dating age basically since Grindr has existed. I mean, because as a gay guy, you don't really start dating a lot until you turn 21. Like it's really
Mm.
quite like I was dating between the ages of 18 and 21 when I was living in New York. We back in my day, we had planetout.com, and I would set up little yeah, that was like all we
I feel
had.
like I vaguely remember that.
Yeah, and that was like all we had, and people would make fun of me for going on internet dates, but until they saw the guys I was dating, and then they were like, "Oh, maybe I should go on internet dates." But what's your
Well, the
opinion
thing
of?
is, Well, I was gonna say the thing is, I'm sort of just old enough to remember a time before Grindr, when it before that existed, and I always say if video killed the radio star, Grindr killed romance. I think it is the worst thing to happen to gay men since AIDS. It's horrible. And I'm a hypocrite. I'm on it. I'm just as bad as anyone, but I think the thing is, for a long time, I had said that like I'm not going to hook up, and unless I'm dating someone, and I'm only going to have dates and relationships. And then eventually, at a certain point, it's like that is just so what's expected of you as a gay man that you fall into it, and you're not happier for it. But you know,
Huh? Yeah, I don't. I've never. Okay, I guess that the thing for me was that I did so much online dating between the ages of 18 and 21, and I learned to really get there's so much performance that goes into online dating, like writing your
yeah,
profile, deciding which photos. It's like, should I put a really cute photo of me, or should I put one that is a little bit more realistic? And should blah 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 blah, like all that shit. And then and for me, you've seen photos of me. My voice sounds quite different than I physically look, and so there's always going to be the element of that, like, oh, this guy has like a kind of a nasal voice. I wasn't expecting that. And I when I meet guys in person, as soon as I turned 21, and after really doing a lot of online dating for 3 years, and then I turned 21 and was able to go out to bars. And I'm actually a very social person. I have no problem being social and meeting people and talking to people and making jokes and everything. Like I'm fine with that. And I could meet people and form relationships organically. It was just so much better, and I never really went back to online dating. And it was because of the fact that I just didn't like this notion of like setting up a fantasy before you actually have any idea what the chemistry might be like. And that's why I've stayed away from it. Like I think I have a maybe a Scruff account or something, but like I don't ever go on it. And I don't know if they lapse. Maybe I should go delete it. You know, like yeah, yeah.
Well, I think apart from even if you're on it, I think it's just seeped so much into the culture where, you know, like I think something that you and I have in common is that the both of us, I feel like, aren't stereotypically masculine and aren't stereotypically feminine. We're just ourselves. And
Yeah.
I think that's something that people really frown upon today in the gay community. This is something we get into in the show, is that I feel like there's sort of basically two things that gay men are allowed to be. You are either the gay guy who conforms to every stereotype and just actively makes yourself into the gay guy, or you're this masked straight acting dude who makes a big showing of how not gay you are. And if you're somewhere in the middle of in between those two things, good luck to you, you know?
Mm.
I
Sorry,
feel like they
I was
sort of
just
really
swallowing some water.
I feel
Yeah,
like they really frown upon anything that can't be classified in a box or that falls out of their norms, which are so rigid today.
yeah. Well, I think that the duality that you might be describing there might be that either you're a politicized gay guy that is completely allows things that ultimately do stem from politics, you know, to control his identity.
Yes.
Or you're one of the gay guys that is um disinterested in that and just wants to get lots of dates. Uh, Largely, see, I do think that there are different sort of different types of gay guys. Like and I've listed them out. Um, I think, and maybe you don't realize this, living in New York City, but like I keep talking to like more and more guys, and I've looked at statistics. Um, White gay men in particular are seemingly separating themselves from LGBT bars and spaces in general. Uh, and a lot of them are either going to straight bars because it's not actually that big of a deal to go to straight bars anymore. Nobody cares. And
Hmm.
guys can meet each other by way of Grindr. And for whatever reason, and I'm not just saying this completely randomly. There was this UK poll done by Stonewall, which is kind of like the human rights campaign of Great Britain, and they um, polled people, and they showed that racial minorities are about twice as likely to go to LGBT spaces as like white gay men. And so I think that there is a massive amount of gay guys who are sick of this being forced to be, you know, either like hyper politicized or forced to be this like hot muscle god, you know, guy
Hmm.
that goes to parties where they're playing house and techno and takes off his shirt and like and you're not even allowed to have any personality at all,
Yeah.
because that would destroy the illusion, you know. And because
Yeah.
I've been to those parties. They're basically circuit parties, you know, and they have them
Mm.
now. I've been to them in New York, you know. Uh,
Oh
like,
God, I'm sorry.
yeah, yeah, like a year or two ago, I went to one, and yeah, I went with a friend who, you know, like we used to go to all these like hipster like rock gay nights and stuff when I first moved to San Francisco, and he had moved to New York, and he was like, yeah, we know about this after party, and you know, it went till like 5 a.m. or something, and went over there, and or maybe even 6. And as soon as we were there, like he's all wasted and stuff, and I'm all like, "Hey, has it occurred to you that this is a circuit party?" And he was like, he kind of had like a jaw drop moment, you know, like he was like, "Oh shit, I'm a circuit boy." I didn't even, because it's like the guys had beards largely, but it's like other than that, you know, like it was a circuit party. But the point I'm making is I do think that there's a massive untapped and unknown demographic of gay guys who are sick of it, who are
Yes.
throwing in the towel. And like, I stay home on YouTube and play video games, which, granted, like, I'm Prince of Queens. I don't represent any sort of like huge demographic myself, but I do get a lot of comments from people who say that they're
We
similar.
do, though, I think.
Yeah,
I think we do. I just think you don't hear about it.
yeah, well, because we're not allowed, because there is actively mainstream gay media that, like, mainstream gay media is terrified of me, and it's not like they don't know I exist. They
Yep.
just don't want people knowing that I exist. Like, they will not even write a hit piece about me because that would direct people's attention to my channel. Because, like, I'm sorry, I have about 2,500,000 views on my channel. Obviously, my videos are getting around. It's
Yeah.
and the fact that they run the small hit pieces on other people. Okay, I don't want to talk about myself too much, but sorry, there was an actual point that I want you to touch on regarding your own show, because I've actually brought this up on live streams before, which is the fact that the mainstream gay political establishment is a very rigidly, or mainstream gay political and media establishment is a very rigid thing. Like, if you look at the case of what happened to Chadwick Wood when he was fired from Out magazine for interviewing Milo Yiannopoulos or whatever,
Yeah.
essentially, or Chadwick Wood, Chadwick Moore, something like that, some double O name, I forget his name. And you people don't quite understand how Borg-like the gay media and gay nonprofits are exactly,
Yep.
until not only have you been gay, but you've actually tried to work in fields like media, and they're telling you you must conform, and you've actually directly had to deal with you encountered an activist organization that said that they were going to, like, protest you.
They said they will actively fight me every step of the way in getting this made. And for no reason. Like, it's not a political show. I don't know what in it should be so offensive. I've gotten so many wonderful messages from people saying they really relate. And I got this crazy email from this person that's like, this is an attack on queerness and this is homophobic. And he had nothing to point to. He was like, there's one line in the pilot where Adrian is on a date with somebody who's very fragile and self-pitying and saying, oh, I was bullied in high school. And Adrian is like, yeah, and I was probably the one that was bullying you. So based on that one line, they were like, your main character openly says that he is a bully and you don't talk about the bullying that queer people face. I'm like, why is it so controversial to have a character that is not a victim, who is tough as nails, I don't understand why that should be a negative thing.
Well, and maybe more like admits to the complexities of the world. I mean, like, all bullying exists in a food chain anyway, and maybe that's what he's probably more talking about, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I feel like that's something we touch on in the show too, is that there's sort of a punk rock angle through it. Adrian is an ex-punk rocker, a fallen punk. So in many ways, I feel like it's sort of contrasting the old school gay community ethos of decades past, when I feel like they stood for more individuality and rebellion and transgression versus the rigid conformity of today. And one point that I think is really interesting with all of these LGBT groups, it's very interesting. So I went to Pride, I guess a couple months ago, and they have all the LGBT groups there. People don't realize just how owned they are and how much they are just a wing of the Democratic Party. So in my state, you have Cynthia Nixon running, and obviously I don't agree with her politics. However, if there's somebody that LGBT groups should be supporting, she's a lesbian. She's very far left, so her policies are probably more in line with theirs. Yet you went to Pride, and every sign in all of the booths, the Stonewall, all of these groups was LGBT for Cuomo. And it's like, well, what happened to supporting your own person? If you're LGBT groups, shouldn't they be supporting her? But they're not. They're supporting the person who their owners tell them to.
Huh. That's interesting. So, but I wanted to ask you a question about that. Because yeah, you're absolutely right. The nonprofits and the media companies, they're owned. They are bought and paid for. It's an entire business. Their money comes from the top, and they do what they are told. And it's sad because there's no audience for what they're doing. Everybody hates it, but they don't
Yeah.
know what to do. And um, what what I want to ask you is, do you think that they were attacking you? Do you think that they legitimately believed in any way that it was actually homophobic, or that there was another reason, or that it was any like why do you think they were really attacking you? Like, what would you guess?
I don't know. I really wonder that all the time. I don't know if it's that they're just so out of touch and in such a bubble and probably sitting on the 67th floor of their money tower that they've no clue what's going on with the little people. So if they're just brainwashed, I don't know. I can't fathom that that would be the case because it's a goal of mine for this show to show a very wide spectrum of LGBT personalities, and to say that all gay people are just roses and sunshine and rainbows would be just as dishonest as saying they're all evil. So I don't know.
Well, I thought it was very
I
telling
think
because
they
okay,
just
so when they sent you a letter, you posted it on Facebook, and I read the whole thing because, of course, I was like, "Oh, this is exactly what I'm interested in as an individual." And what I remember about it that I found very striking was that it wasn't just that they said that your show is queer phobic and homophobic or something like that, but what they also did was they offered you a list of suggestions.
Yep.
What were they
They
again?
said, oh God, they said, if you would like to write a show that's about the community, which by the way sounds like a cult, but if you'd like to write a show about the community, there are plenty of material with things like marriage rights and hate crimes and the ballooning cost of HIV medications and trans stuff. And I'm like, oh no, you can write a show about that and we'll see who gets a larger audience.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And
And so that leads me to believe that what they were mad about was that you weren't already one of their foot soldiers in the media trenches, in the culture war. They want more people who are actual, because it's really hard to like write scripts. Like, not that many people think that they can do it until they try, and then it's like,
yeah,
oh,
it's very hard.
yeah. And so and so I think that they're wanting more people like you to who have initiative, who are trying to actually get things made, but you aren't their thing, and in fact you might actively offer an alternative, the realistic perspective of like what's really going on in the gay community, and they don't want that because uh ultimately the Democratic Party, who is where these people get their money, they don't
Yep.
really have any solutions for the problems that gay men face anymore. Like they don't um at least not anything con- aside from the rising cost of HIV medication, because the Democratic Party does tend to offer affordable health care to HIV positive men. That's something that they have
Mhm.
consistently given. And but other than that, their main interest is largely just kind of ignoring the fact that they're not helping gay men. And so if you were to write a show about, I don't want to say gay misery, but gay hardships, that that's going to bug them, because it's like, oh wait, our one of our groups that we're supposed to say is kind of all right is not doing all right. And
And
you're
well, also, I think I'm sorry. Also, I think that what a big thing that I'm saying in it that they don't like too is that this is our fault. The call is coming from inside the house. Like the problems that so many gay men face today that are the biggest problems are problems from other gay people. We can't just keep blaming homophobia and straight people, because at least in my experience, that hasn't compared to the struggle of dealing with other gay men and not fitting in with other gay men. And, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
that's such a big part of our lives that we're not allowed to talk about. Like, the call is coming from inside the house, you know?
Yeah, yeah. The worst thing that I really remember dealing with in New York City as a gay guy would be like Jersey guys yelling out windows occasionally that
Yeah.
you're calling me a faggot, and I lived in, you know, like right on the border between Bushwick and Williamsburg for most of the time when Bushwick was still actually really dangerous. And
Mm.
so you would think that, like, because there were muggings and stuff, just not ever me. Like, you know, like,
I mean,
and
I've had that happen, but I just think it's not as much as the day-to-day grind of having to deal with the people who, you know, like, it's difficult when, because the thing is, I think if you're straight, there are thousands of different types of men or women that you can date. But if you're gay and you don't really relate to like the one or two types that are out there, good luck, you know, because it's already such a small group.
yeah. Well, what do you feel about gay male feminists? Obviously, I'm gonna have to ask this question.
How do you think I feel about that?
Do you come across a lot in New York?
Yeah, yeah. But like you said, actually, though, I should say, like, I think a lot of people are starting to wake up. Like, the last maybe 7 or 8 guys that I've met in a row were sort of out of this mentality of the far left and sort of a more walk away perspective.
Uh-huh. Well, that's
I do think
cool.
people are starting to wake up.
Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, you know, I'm living in Seattle currently, and I was last living in San Francisco, and so things are a little bit further left. And one of the things about New York is that New York, culturally, the way people are, the way people's attitude in relation to, you know, what's going on, how we should behave, what is America like. New York is always the quickest to change. You know, so
Yeah,
like a new presidential administration goes into office, and within 2 or 3 years, all of New York changes. Like, the type of music everybody listens to changes. Uh, that's what always kind of happens in New York. And so and then it takes you know, two more years for it to hit LA, and then for the next 5 years it hits the rest of the country as all the LA people hyper produce it to make sure that it's everywhere in media or whatever.
of
So there,
course.
yeah, so I think that there could be a little bit of a New Yorker kind of a privilege, but that's interesting to know. Like, like, have you had any particular bad experiences with gay male feminists? Like, have you ever been on a date with one, like some guy that's like talking about patriarchy or some shit?
Oh God, that just, I mean, I think I usually won't let it get that far to a date, but the worst thing is I had a friend who I won't say who it is because he's kind of well known, but I had a friend, he's not friends with me anymore clearly, but he was on a TV show, and so for each week that it was on, he would have parties at his house, and this was in like Williamsburg, Brooklyn, the most uppity lefty gays imaginable, all like snapping their fingers and talking about how everything's racist, and they were just insufferable. So yeah, I was disinvited from going there for a while. um What's funny though is, even I think it's beyond even gay guys, because a couple months ago I was at a friend's party and there was this straight guy there, and so we were just making conversation, and I was talking about some douchebag that I'd gone on a date with who was really horrible. So this guy that I'm talking to says, he's like, "Oh wow, yeah, he really sounds like a douche." I mean, I'm sorry. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't say that because I realize that I'm very privileged as a straight white male, and I could never begin to understand the discrimination that gay people face on a daily basis.
Oh God.
F
Yeah.
off.
No,
I'm like,
there's
this is not a Lifetime movie, sweetheart.
yeah, and there's a lot of straight guys who have. I mean, I think that they're just terrified
Yeah.
because, you know, like straight guys. honestly can be attacked so easily at the drop of a hat and have so little ability to defend themselves. And with a straight guy, it could always lead to other forms of attack. So, like, I can go on Facebook and just be completely vicious and just, because I'm not nice on Facebook. Like I don't want to say I'm vicious. That's a mischaracterization, but I'm rude. I'm definitely very condescending, and uh, because one of the things I like to do is gather material by talking to people that I find extremely annoying, and then I like write videos about their patterns of behavior. That's like one of the big things I'm known for. Um, and being gay, there's certain things that I can get away with, and it's not that I never you never get to say that you're oppressed by being a gay guy. Like you're not allowed to use that anymore, and you haven't been for years. Like
No.
if you said that, if you ever make the mistake of telling a feminist or far leftist, like a leftist in general, that you're allowed to have an opinion about something because you're a gay guy. No, they will tell you that the fact that you even said that makes you less trustworthy, like less reputable, because you're so stupid that you thought that being gay still meant that you're oppressed. And so
You're a cis white male.
yeah, and you're a cis white man that thought it was a good idea to, it's kind of like if somebody makes the mistake of telling one of these people that they have black friends, they're going to think that they're more racist, even though obviously the reverse is true. Like, chances are, if somebody does have a lot of black friends, they aren't actually racist. But if you ever bother to tell them, I have lots of black friends, then somehow they want to think that you are racist. So they do that with gay guys. But what they can't do ever is try to come up with some weird way of calling you rapey towards women. And I believe
They've written articles about it though.
oh yeah, they do. And but it's very, very
I saw your
easy.
video on that.
Oh, I've made a lot of it's one of the main things that motivated me to actually make my channel, because the fact that, this allegation that gay men are constantly sexually assaulting women, and literally nobody in the gay media was firing back against this
Yup.
allegation. And it's so obviously the reverse of what is true. Like, women come into our spaces and touch us. What are you talking about? And
It's funny because I remember when I read that article about how, gay men just grope women at gay bars and stuff. I think like a few days before I had read that article, a friend brought me to like his friend's apartment, and I had never met this girl. So I knock on the door, she opens it totally nude and goes, "Hey, I just got breast implants. Here, feel." Grabs my hand and puts them on her giant fake knockers. And now I'm reading that gay men do that to women.
yeah,
It's a two-way street.
it's completely absurd. And any gay man who's ever actually spent a lot of time interacting with women, is just like, okay, I wouldn't exclude the possibility that there's been a few moments when gay guys were like kind of inappropriate and everything, but like in general, it's a casual, fun environment, and mostly women are the ones that are overstepping their boundaries. Mostly, like
Yeah, I
almost,
agree.
almost entirely, and every gay guy agrees. But they
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 won't say they agree.
um well, there a lot of them are sort of scared to, but if every gay guy that you ever talk to in private will say, yeah, that's what it is. Like I've
Yeah.
never actually seen this situation where some gay guy was drunkenly saying that he's allowed to do this because he's gay. Ha 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 ha. Like, it's like, I've literally never seen that. Nobody has. And but um women aren't going, like, I do think that with things like the Me Too movement, and Me Too is not anything new. It didn't start with that hashtag. It's, um well, we've already sworn on this stream. My friend Spacepan, who's another YouTuber, he calls it the Salem bitch trials. And the Salem bitch trials were going on a long time before hashtag Me Too became publicized. Like this culture of making potentially false, unverifiable accusations about men, has been going on for a number of years, to the point where, various different CEOs and stuff at tech companies refuse to ever be alone with women, because
Oh
there's
wow.
been instances, like so many instances of basically women corroborating, like feminists trying to blackmail companies by corroborating stories together of some sort of sexual harassment, sexual assault. It's been a very strategic move, and it's one of the reasons why so many companies are basically headed by feminist women, diversity, blah 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 blah, and they hold the place hostage and make everybody afraid to defy them. And that culture has been around for a long time, and gay guys were rather unfamiliar with it. But I think straight men have been living in fear of these accusations for a while. And I say that because, I know a lot of straight guys, and some of them are just, the way that they are terrified of their female friends on social media is astounding. Like, they will not argue with their female friends when it comes
I've
to
seen
talking.
that.
Yeah, and it's and like one time, um semi recently, this guy that I know, who's a straight guy, posted something, and I just, maybe it had to do with feminism or something. I don't, maybe it just had to do with politics in general. And I posted an opinion, and I have a tendency to write a whole long paragraph. Um, like maybe he
Same.
posted, yeah, and he posted, let's say he posted an article that was a misrepresentation of something, right? And so I said, I corrected it, I debunked it in a paragraph. I said, actually, this is the truth, and did a good job debunking it. And I immediately had what I call the Facebook feminist fit, which is what happens when a woman, or two, starts relentlessly posting, and they're not trying to argue with you. What they're trying to do is blow up the timeline by posting over and over and over and over again, so that eventually the mutual friend, the person whose timeline this is happening upon, they get annoyed, and they decide to unfriend me. So the idea
Mhm.
is, I made this comment, and then this girl is just posting, posting, posting underneath. And she's not actually trying to argue with me. She knows she never could. She's just trying to get rid of me by annoying our mutual friend. And so they were doing that very, very right out the gate. Like, it was very clear that they were doing that. And he made the mistake of posting a vague thing about, like, that inferred that he felt that they were bullying me. But he didn't come right out and say who. Oh, I think that he says, "Hey, I don't know if I'm okay with the bullying behavior." And
Wow.
and then another girl got involved, and the three of them were doing the Facebook feminist fit. Like, they were just posting and posting and posting, and they were like, "Oh yeah, yeah, this Prince guy is a bully," and I'm like, don't think he was talking about me. And they're like, "Well, you're the one using, patriarchal I just, they were trying to twist it around and say, and I'm like, okay, but how can I be first of all, I'm not being unreasonable. Second of all, I'm the one who's outnumbered, and you guys are just calling me names. That's literally impossible for me to be a bully in this situation." And they just kept going and kept going. And he posted probably about 5 to 10 times. And I was like, why aren't you just telling who you meant? Like, tell us, who did you mean? Were you
Yeah.
referring were you referring to them, or were you referring to me? And they were like, yeah, tell us, tell us, tell us. And I was like, oh, see, you're scared to even admit that you meant them, because based on how they treat me, what they would do to you if you were to side with me, because
Mm-hmm.
they work as a team. Like every feminist on social media will join it, and not on all social media, but in these Facebook, if they're in the right friend circle, like if they think that like, because this guy does identify as a male feminist, um
Mm.
they
TikTok until he's accused of something.
yeah, and I was like, yeah, if you make one of these girls angry, she will probably unfriend you and then go around saying all sorts of horrible things about you, because she's already said all sorts of horrible things about me and she doesn't even know me. And so she's
Mm.
already demonstrated what type of person she is. So of course you're scared to call her a bully. And he finally admitted that she was a bully and then immediately said, now that I've said that, if anybody else posts anything at all on this stupid comment, I'm going to unfriend them no matter who it is. And so they weren't even allowed to respond. But it was very, very telling how scared he was of defying them. And so I do think that what you were describing in terms of it's not just gay guys. Yeah, in a lot of ways, it's worse with straight guys, because they are actively terrorized in this weird way that, like, there's no telling what type of weird crap they could come up with about a straight guy to smear him.
It's funny because actually, a couple weeks ago, a friend of mine, he works at a bar in New York, and he works with this girl who I think she's about like 22, 23 years old, and he referred to her as a millennial. He got brought in for harassment charges for calling her a millennial.
How?
They said he was denigrating her and belittling her, whatever. So he didn't get fired or anything, but he got brought in and said she was very uncomfortable by that. And he got in for a talkie with his boss for referring to a millennial as a millennial. It's so
What?
crazy. But
I didn't even
what's
know
that?
that was.
I didn't either.
Yeah. Okay, that's crazy. Yeah.
But with me too, I feel, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it. I feel like it can be a bit of a double-edged sword, and obviously there's too much of it now. But I don't know. On the one hand, I feel like it is something that's needed because that is so prevalent in that industry. Like, I've known so many people, and I had an experience like that of getting dropped from a film because I rejected the director's advances. So I think it is needed, but I think it's the same thing that happens with all of these groups, whether that's LGBT or Black Lives Matter or Me Too, is they start with a very good message that I agree with, and then they just take it to such a ridiculous extreme where you end up with like the Aziz Ansari thing that was so absurd, you know?
Mhm. Well, I can see why you would say that. My take on it is that they always start with nefarious motives and they brand it as something with a
Mm.
noble purpose. And I think that became painfully clear with Me Too way too quickly. Like, it was like, okay, no, the people who are really pushing this are sinister, very, very obviously. Like, yeah, there was that like first week when like people that we knew were sharing their hashtag Me Too stories. But I was actually just listening to an interview with a man named Logan McCree, who's a gay. He's a bisexual man who is in porn, and he's now an MRA. And he was talking about they were talking about Me Too, and he said exactly what my um kind of read of this sort of situation is. And um tell me if you agree with this or not, or how it might relate to your experience. um when I was in San Francisco, I would have a Me Too moment. Like, I do actually have a Me Too moment that I didn't even really think about, because I didn't care all that much. It's like
Mm.
things like this had happened to me before, but when I thought about it and I thought about the power dynamic, it is pretty crazy. So when I first moved to San Francisco, I went to this very, very seedy bar called Aunt Charlie's, and Aunt Charlie's is the kind of place where it's very small, it's very darkly lit. It very cruisy, and it's a great place. It's I love it.
Mhm.
And the thing about it is that um uh it's right in the Tenderloin, and it's the kind of place where young sex worker type guys, because there's a lot of sex workers in San Francisco who and it's not uncommon that you come across them. So I was hanging out with this friend that I had just met who was an actual sex worker, but he was also a writer, and so I found him interesting, and we met this and I didn't know who this person was, but she was one of the most powerful drag queens in San Francisco. And if people underestimate what that would mean, it actually means a lot. Like if somebody's a powerful drag queen, they're actually very substantial with what their influence over the city. So I was hanging out with this guy, and she was there, and I apparently found me attractive, and spent the entire like first 10 minutes that I was first meeting this person, and I was talking to she kept like reaching down my pants and trying to like finger my asshole.
Jesus.
Yeah, like it was very blatant, like what was happening. And now personally, I have been through a lot of situations with uh extremely extremely high intensity advances from gay guys and stuff that I'm not actually interested in, and I don't really care that much. But the thing is about it was that I was in a situation where my friend was trying to please this person, and I didn't really even know who the fuck she was, but my friend was like, oh yeah, she's really cool, and really important, blah blah blah. And I'm like, okay, could she stop figuring my ass? And I would like, I I would kind of like sidestep to try to kind of like get away from it, and but she was very persistent and like kept doing it as if she could just get away with it. And
Ugh.
I didn't ever yell and say stop, but like it was kind of like there was probably 3 different times where she reached down my pants and did it, and it was like, okay, what the fuck is going on? Like, who the fuck do you think you are? And then I figured out who exactly this person was over the next, you know, course of the next 2 or 3 months. And I was like, oh, that's probably why they felt so entitled to be able, and they probably also thought that
Mm,
I was they probably also thought that I was a sex worker because of my friend.
mm,
Like I was with them, and I can see why they would have thought that. Um and but what I did as a response was I was like, I just told everybody exactly what happened. I was like, yeah, they were totally fingering my asshole for like a while. And people were like, well, did you tell them? No, the funny thing was, almost everybody just said, oh, I don't believe that they would ever do anything like that. And I was like, well, yeah, I know that they're very well respected, and they probably mostly don't do that. Like, I'm not saying I don't know anything. I have no reason to believe that they do this commonly, but they certainly did it to me. And
yeah.
and now I'm not interested in any sort of like justice for this. Like, it's not that big of a deal. The only thing that I really feel inclined to do about this is tell people that it
Yeah.
happened. And now I'm pretty sure that that person tried to blacklist me in a few ways, because
Mm,
I was quite open about it. I told many people about it, and I know it must have gotten back to them. But I also literally never heard a story of that type of thing happening again from about that person.
mm.
So there is a chance that me speaking up about it and making it really clear that this was inappropriate behavior did help them realize that, like, no, you don't just own every boy that moves to town in this city.
Yeah.
So um
That's great. It's funny because I was actually just talking about this with a friend of mine, and she's amazing. She was actually gang raped at gunpoint when she was 14. And we were saying how, and she's the strongest, most together person. She doesn't make herself into this victim. And we were saying how it's kind of frustrating that we see these people who, maybe some guy grabbed their ass in a bar once 10 years ago, and they make themselves into victim of the century. Or that chick with the Aziz Ansari thing about how she said, oh, this was the worst night of my life and the worst thing that ever happened with the guy. And we were saying, how lucky you are then if that's the worst thing that's ever happened with a guy. It wouldn't crack like top 100 for me.
Yeah. But
it's just this victim culture.
Yeah, victim culture. And also, like, don't you think that there's something dangerous about this, like, retroactive justice thing that people are, because, like, if it's an industry person that's, like, sort of notorious for doing these kind of things, like, yeah, I can understand mobilizing to sort of out them. But, like, what if it really is something that was a rather isolated thing? Like, how do we differentiate?
Well, here's what I feel very strongly is that have you heard of this documentary called An Open Secret?
No.
It came out maybe 5 years ago or something. So before all this Me Too shit. And it's this documentary that shows how prevalent this is in Hollywood from the top up, pedophilia. And they interviewed a lot of people like Corey Feldman. And of course, they won't allow this film to be shown anywhere. You could probably find it on some obscure website. But it really shows how at the highest levels there are pedophiles and predators. So what I feel really strongly is that I think all of these actors and celebrities who are being accused, not that they, in a lot of instances, aren't doing that, but I think that they're being used as a distraction, to distract from the real problem, which is the people who own the building. Because think about it, since Harvey Weinstein, not one powerful studio head or somebody of his stature, not one of them has been implicated. Surely he's not the only one. So I think they're doing this to distract from what the real issue is, which is the people as high up as it goes. And I think they don't want people to realize that. So, oh, here's James Franco acting pervy. Here's Aziz Ansari, getting a blowjob.
That's actually a really good point. I never thought of it like that, actually.
I think it's very deliberate.
Yeah, I mean, and also, yeah. I mean, there's definitely, like, the feminist Salem bitch trial element to it, but I think that the real powerful movers and the shakers are glad. It's like, okay, let the feminists eat everybody else. Like they that's fine with me. Like, so.
Well, because look at how many years NBC News and I think the New York Times as well, but all of these media outlets protected Harvey Weinstein and killed stories on him. So you think they're not still doing that? Of course they are.
Yeah. And I wonder why he went down when he did exactly. Like, I imagine it's because he had a very, very close relationship with the Democratic Party and Hillary Clinton. Like, even he was friends with her. People think that oh, well, he was the guy that produced Pulp Fiction and the English Patient and blah blah blah, and it's like, well, it's not just that when you get to be his level of Hollywood powerful. Like, he has so much influence over things that you would never even see his name on at all. And so, like, everything coming out of Hollywood, like all of the pro Hillary Clinton, based stuff that essentially boiled down to pro Hillary Clinton propaganda, all of that stuff in a lot of ways was probably engineered by him, and it failed. And so it's kind of like, okay, Harvey, you're fired. you know, like, that's what, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
So let's see, what else should we talk about? I think that we should we could go for maybe another 10 minutes. And
awesome. Well, I was going to say, too, about something you said earlier was that, with the gay media and stuff, it's funny because, I feel like the show I'm making, and I should say we start production next month. We have a Kickstarter that there's about a week left. But And I feel like there's been a lot of excitement from a lot of people who are finding out about this show and a lot of momentum. And what's funny is that I've reached out to hundreds of LGBT media outlets and they want nothing to do with it. So I really feel, and the Kickstarter has been hugely successful. We reached our goal in less than 2 weeks, and I really think that there is a huge craving amongst the people to see something different.
Oh yeah, the audience certainly wants these things, and it's always kind of been on that way. Actually, I have a video that I will send you called "If the Audience Wants It, Corporations Will Hide It," and it's about how this has been a consistent pattern of my life, in which the stuff that the audiences actually really enjoy is consistently pushed to the back burner or corrupted in some way or another, to the point, corrupted, diluted, compromised in some way, so that it's not what it originally was. And there's various different reasons that I think that is. It's a shame with entertainment, but at the same time, we still do have the internet to a certain degree in certain capacities. Where will people be able to find your show?
Most likely it'll be streaming. What we're doing is we start production next month on a pilot presentation, and we're going to make a big epic trailer and stuff. So that's what we're going to use to try and pitch the show, and we have some interests. But the thing is, I'm not going to water it down and just toe the line and march in lockstep with this agenda. So if somebody won't pick it up who's accepting of that and will let it be what it is, then we're just going to go fully independently. And with this, for example, we're doing it totally independently because, I'm not so sure that a lot of those corporate outlets will ever be accepting of a show that's critical of the gay community.
Yeah, I don't think that they ever will, or at least not in the way that you're doing it.
But I'm sorry.
Well, I just don't have an incentive that in any of these corporate leftist leaning Democratic Party leaning outlets are ever going to pick it up. And the reason why is not simply because there isn't a part of them that wants to be hip and wants to adapt to the times, because I think that there is a part of them that does kind of want to do that. But I think that ultimately, more than anything, they're not going to, even if they got a really, really well-rated show, they more than likely would still not be profitable businesses anyway. Like, all sorts of these companies are going out of business. Cable networks are like not bringing in, like, they're probably in the red anyhow.
Mm-hmm.
And a major network, Fusion, is like going bankrupt. BuzzFeed's letting go employees. It's probably the same to be said for places like HBO, even. Maybe not so much HBO, because they still have like Game of Thrones and people pay for that. Like, I will pay for a season of Game of Thrones on my PS4 so that I can watch it easily. But
that's something that I think is very interesting, though, is that, the internet has really democratized content. And if you look at unscripted content, news and commentary and what you do, the mainstream corporate media is slowly being put out of business. Like, so many YouTubers have ratings that are 10 and 20 times the ratings of cable channels. Yet I think it's interesting that when it comes to the entertainment we consume and scripted content, there really isn't anything that's at that level. That, like, we are still so reliant on corporations. And I really think that all it will take is one show being successful independently, not part of the mainstream corporate structure. I think people just need to go out there and do it and put it out there. And I think if it's something that's good and that is honest and fills a void, I think it could be just as successful as anything on Netflix.
Yeah, well, no, I certainly think that there's going to be a transition to more independently hosted television things, and I'm actually working on something myself. I'll talk to you about it in private. I don't like talking about it on my channel. But I think that there is a lot of future for that, and it's so funny. Like, there's so much content on YouTube from individuals, people like speaking about issues, talking about politics, showing footage of rallies and giving commentary. And then there's like this, like, you get to sort of watch reality television show stuff with live streams if you get into that, but it's actually mostly really boring because, you know, there's no actual actors and the people aren't in the same room with each other, so it's not quite as good as a reality show, you know, like it's never going to be a bad girls club type fight on these live stream, you know. So
only when Antifa's there.
yeah, well, yeah, but that's more of the live footage. But when I say live stream, I mean like YouTubers talking to each other.
Oh,
like,
okay, I thought you meant that.
Yeah, but what there isn't really, there kind of is a teeny bit, but like scripted, people who are really trained to write scripts, and trained to act and trained to produce things, putting things together and putting that out there. And there's been a void of that for a while in terms of like young, hip, edgy culture. Like there you know, we still have South Park, which people watch. Like, you know, the PC Principal season of South Park was actually really quite brilliant. And
it's great.
And but the like there isn't so much like stuff on like Adult Swim as there used to be last decade. Like, remember when, you know, being like a teenager and watching Adult Swim and being like, oh, this is so cool and so edgy. Well, they don't really have that anymore. And
no, nothing does.
It just doesn't exist, really, seemingly. And I think that that it's possible to bring it back, but it's certainly a lot harder than sitting around making YouTube videos. Like, I can write a YouTube script for me to talk in, obviously not very long because I have like over 550 videos. It's not hard for me to do that. But writing, you know, 10 minutes of an actual like fiction thing where other people are talking to each other, that's hard. It really is hard, and you have to be trained to do it. And so I'm glad that there's people like Mike who are trained to do it and who are taking it upon themselves to do the work that other people say that maybe they would do, but they never actually really do.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, and you know, like, these are all things that are going to be touched on in the show. You know, a big thing in the show is the main character Adrian. His job, he works writing sponsored content for a BuzzFeed type website called Clickline, which is basically just a cult. And every morning their employees have to gather to watch these friendly musical animated videos where their mascot Clicky the Squirrel sings to you about microaggressions and why you're a terrible person.
Oh my God! See, that sounds great. Like, yeah, no wonder the corporate sponsored media are like yeah. No, I mean, they're not gonna publish things that are directly attacking their business strategy, probably. But hey, you know, like, times change, corporations change, or not corporations change so much as like which corporations become major players. And we are looking at a potential, I mean, Trump is actually, I don't know if you've heard, but Trump is directly coming out and publicly saying that he's going to do something about bias on the internet. Did you know that?
Yeah, I'd heard about that. Hopefully.
Yeah. And for him to make that statement, actually make that as a public statement, it probably does mean that he's planning on doing something policy oriented to it. You know what I mean? Like, so there might, you know, I'm really happy. I got in on YouTube personally right at the tail end of when it was possible to grow organically if you had, you know, content that people wanted to make, and you made enough videos with catchy titles. Like, I got most of my subscribers by doing a lot of listicle format videos, and that's how I got my early subscribers. If you could do that, like, people would do searches, and those things would, your videos would just kind of pop up in the search function, and then people would watch your channel and subscribe. It's not like that.
It's such a shame you can't do that anymore.
No, you can't. If you search for if you search for Antifa, you'll find mainstream media. You will not find
Yep.
real videos about Antifa. And when people like myself make them, they age restrict them anyhow. So it's like I don't get monetized, and it's harder to see them. You know, like the age restriction isn't. It doesn't actually hardly affect children. Children can find ways around that. It's not like kids are dumb.
Yeah.
But what it does do is anybody who's watching it on a smart TV, the automatic setting on a smart TV puts it in age restricted mode. So if they ever search for something, like you just won't be able to see that video even showing that it exists if you're on your smart TV, unless you actively take off age restriction mode. So it's like all these little hoops that you have to jump through to see the interesting content. But still, I was lucky enough to get in on the YouTube train. I hopped on the caboose and made a name for myself, and have been able to network with a lot of great people, and people that are doing new media, and that's cool. And but what I think is that there might be a new frontier of video sharing. There's a site called BitChute that people are going to more and more, and there's a whole new social media networking site called that's basically a potential replacement for Facebook called Minds.com. And then there's a new Twitter called Gab.ai. And as Twitter and Facebook are dramatically failing as businesses, all these places really have to do is streamline their products a little bit better. Minds.com in particular is very hard to use, but it's it's more powerful. But if we had a free, like if we had an internet where it was like the people's wishes were actually being respected, like the stuff that people wanted to see was actually easy to see and easy to find, which ultimately should theoretically be what the platforms want. Like if they want people to use their platforms, they should be trying to prioritize and make sure that people can actually see things, you would think. But they largely haven't been doing that. But if they start, there could be this golden age where all of the people who didn't lose hope, like people like you, who are still making your script and like really grinding, can launch it on a platform that people are actually really looking at, and you can be early to the party. So
I hope so. Thank you so much.
yeah. So any closing things to tell the audience about?
Just if show's called Cigarettes and Valentines, and if it sounds like something you'd like to see and you want to support bold, ballsy, subversive content, check it out. We've got about 10 days left on Kickstarter, so you can just search Cigarettes and Valentines on Kickstarter, or there's a Facebook page, Cigarettes and Valentines TV, or find me on Facebook, Mike Harlow. It's like facebook.com/mike.harlow.18, Mikey the Harlow on Twitter. I think that's all of them. There are too many of them.
And I'll put the Kickstarter in the video description immediately after this. I forgot to even think about that. So that people,
thanks so much.
Yeah, so people who watch this live stream can potentially do that. And other than that, I want to keep this short so that people are able to watch it on playback pretty easily. They're not intimidated by the long length, which I very often do. So I'm going to stop the broadcast, and we can talk a little bit after.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. This is so great. I've watched so many of your videos. You're such an amazing representative for us black sheep LGBTs.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much. So you see that, audience? My peers like me. All right, I'm going to stop the broadcast now.